We're back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast, the number one podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. This is episode 82. I'm your host, Christian Brindle. I'm joined with my co-host, as always, Glenn Shelton. Good morning, good sir.
You guys, we have, if you're listening to audio only, we have two doctors on the podcast today. We have got, of course, as always, Dr. Mehmet Oz behind me. And then my co-host, Dr. Brindle, is also on the pod today. He's got some glasses that I feel like I'm about to talk to a psychiatrist. Some very, very glamorous.
Why don't you lay down on the couch?
Yeah.
Tell me how you feel about that. Head back. Oh my goodness. Lots to cover today. We're going to be talking about a topic that we probably should have talked about earlier in the year, but better late than never. And that is, what does it really take for an agent to pump out 500 new clients in a year? And it is certainly possible. I've done it as a Medicare agent.
I did it in one day yesterday.
No yeah. Nope. You did. Also going to talk a little bit about private equity in the industry, a little bit, a wee bit, and lots of places to start. One thing I did want to start at was before we jump into even the private equity, just super quickly. Of course, Medicarians is going on right now.
Of course.
We've been a little vocal on this show about Medicarians, but there certainly does seem like there's a lot of agents there. What is your thoughts on the event, on that event? Do you feel like we should have gone?
I mean, I always get, no matter what the event is, it could be the worst event in the industry, and I'm always going to have a little bit of FOMO if I'm just being honest with everybody, right? Like, there's always a little bit of that, like, oh, you weren't there, you should have seen what happened, or so-and-so did this, it was insane. And like, so it doesn't matter what the event is, I'm always going to have a little bit of that. The bottom line is, like, we have such limited time.
I know that's literally
the thing. Yeah, we don't have any time.
I was talking to someone over the weekend about this, about Medicarians, and they were like, "You're going to be there?" I was like, "No." They're like, "Why?" I'm like, "I'm literally leaving for Miami in days." Right? As are you. To go on a trip with some of our esteemed agent partners. Gonna be a ton of fun, but like, that's rough. Doing that back-to-back travel and everything. Here's my thought process. Like, from everything I ever have seen about the event, it is one big breakout session, the whole thing, which I despise breakout sessions. I really do. But it makes me think maybe the summit should change to nothing but breakout sessions, because that's clearly what these people want.
2026, breakouts only. The summit breakout, #breakout. I would love to hear comments from anybody who watches this live or the replay. Yes. Do you actually like break? Because I've had some positive breakouts that I've attended at events, but generally I prefer no breakouts. I think that's just my general. If I'm leaning one way, I'm not super like. I think you're probably. I think you feel stronger. Yeah. You're more. I don't have quite the same strong opinion on this one, but I'd love to hear from the audience, the figgies out there. Which, speaking of, I actually talked to one of our figgies yesterday. That's something I wanted to talk about.
Oh.
But did you want to talk about your FOMO first? Do you have FOMO?
No, I don't feel like I have FOMO. The only thing I feel like is, it's one of those things where we are not attending any events this year outside of our own, and I'm attending Andrew Lee's conference for California in July. Those are the only events the entire year that we are participating in. And I feel good about that decision. Like, I feel good about really telling people, hey, if you want to see me, if you want to see Glenn, you have to come to our events. It's almost like this exclusivity thing. Next year, though, I think there's probably value in us being there, being seen, getting to spend time with our agents, that kind of thing. It was just really bad timing. It really was. I mean, I probably would have gone if the Miami trip wasn't so close.
That was my same thought too, is like, and it's tough because again, it just comes back to this limited time thing where there's dozens of events we could go to every year. I could probably create a list of 30, 40 events that you could make an argument I should be at. But the reality is we're running 5 companies. We have families, we have a lot going on in our day to day. I was thinking today when I was working out this morning. I
missed my workout this morning.
I
went yesterday and I did the weights. I woke up this morning feeling kind of sore. I did something right. But I totally missed it this morning. I slept in another hour.
By the way, I was going to tell you this privately, but I guess I'll just say it here now. If you forget your shorts or if you forget workout attire on our trip next week.
I did that. I did that. You're right. You're right. You're right. I did.
Did you do that?
Did you do that? Who did that?
Gaslit. I made gaslit right here.
What kind of idiot would do that?
Yeah,
that was me. That was me.
This is your reminder. This is your reminder.
It won't happen. It won't happen. I'm gonna pack like 10 pairs of basketball shorts. I am not letting it happen again.
Good. Okay.
Miami this time of the year, probably go for a run in the morning outside.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking too. Yeah. So, anyways, but I was thinking this morning, like how much I'm behind on things. Like there's so much that I need to get to that I feel like we're spinning so many plates. So that's kind of my whole thing is like, it's not necessarily to say you shouldn't be at Medicarians. Medicarians is a horrible event. It's more so just I don't have the time.
I did kind of say that on the show, but
I've also never been, so I feel like I can't have that strong opinion. I will say that I've heard from others that the event was lackluster previous years. Maybe this year it's a great event. I don't know. I haven't heard great things about the event previous years from agents that I work with. I will say that.
Same. Same. It's just seems like an easy target to me because it's an event full of breakout sessions. Literally, that's like the whole thing. There's vendors. You walk through the vendor booths, and then there's breakout sessions. I don't need to go to know that. I've heard that. I can see it with the social media posts. Like it's nothing but breakout sessions. And that just is such a nauseating thought to me. It's like hell. It's like me being in hell. An event, 3 days of breakout sessions. Oh, great. Where do I sign up for that? But anyway, so I want to let's shift gears a little bit.
Hang on. I want to tell you about the audience member I spoke to yesterday. One of the Figgies. Guys, we still need to solidify. I don't know if that's going to be the name, but we need an audience name. Feel free to comment below as well. Here's another ask. If you have a name in mind, if you're a listener to the podcast, Figgies comes from figures. I was trying to really shorten it. Initially, I was thinking millionaires, millies. Maybe we have some Lil Wayne fans. Some Lil Wayne. I'm a Millie. Listen, I'm a future Millie.
Oh, I won't play it. We'll get demonetized.
Oh yeah,
I was about to.
Okay, so really fast though. So, they had a question about lead heroes. I'm talking to them. Hey, I listen to you and Christian almost every day. Like I love listening to you guys. Oh, great, thank you.
Oh,
and it was kind of they offered some constructive criticism, and then they also shared like what they liked, and I thought it was so funny.
I'm dying to hear this.
Yeah, I know you. This is great. So the pod. Well, I'll ask you. Do you want the good or the bad first?
Give me the good first. Give me the good. Build me up and then
dessert first. Okay.
Yeah, dessert first.
They loved that we were kind of unscripted in the sense that a lot of content out there is coming from, big organizations or from carriers. They're reading a script, right? They're literally, they're getting fed lines, right? And
correct.
I totally have consumed plenty of that content myself over the years as an agent. And it's nauseating to consume too much of that, right? So that was like and I love that because I feel like that's kind of our mission with the show, right? Is like we want to sling it as we're seeing it, what we're hearing. We're not really beholden to anybody, right? We're like independent media. This is how I was thinking about it this morning. Is like, you have all the mainstream media, they're all owned by these giant corporations. They're all being fed scripts. And then you have like the independent media, the people who can come and say essentially whatever they want, whatever they feel the truth is. So I love that, right? That was the good. Now here's the constructive good. He's like,
hit me.
They're like, yeah, when you guys start talking about the NBA or Star Wars, sometimes I just have to skip ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was dying.
I can understand. I can understand.
But they said we need to make it our own, and they weren't saying like, you can't talk about it. I just thought it was so funny because when we get on these tangents, sometimes I'm like, oh, and there goes the audience.
For real.
Sure enough, it's true. Sometimes that does happen.
Yes. Well, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I mean, when you hear criticism, your mind immediately jumps to, if I hear Christian's voice again, I'm going to jump in front of a bus. Like I hate Christian's voice. Can he get a new voice?
That's my criticism. That's my criticism. But that's different for the audience, I'm sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think that's fair and very warranted criticism.
Yeah. So. And hey, if we get on a wild tangent and you want to skip ahead, by all means, right? Go.
Please don't skip.
It's
not good for our analytics. No, just kidding.
You're messing up the stats of the show. Please stop.
I'd rather you don't.
You stop, little Billies. Little Billies and little Millies out there.
Little Billies. Please don't. All right. Let's shift gears into first topic of the day. I want to make sure we have time. I want to make sure we have ample time for the main topic. And this question I felt like was kind of interesting. I've heard it tossed around a couple of times. Private equity. Private equity has become a very big part of the Medicare distribution space. Probably the last, 7 to 10 years potentially. Maybe not even that long. Maybe more like 5 to 7 years. I don't know how we'd really quantify it, but is it good or bad for our space? What are your thoughts?
It's probably a mix is my first thought. I don't know if it's necessarily one thing because on money can give agents access, if the additional capital, right? So PE, private equity, hedge funds, if a lot of money comes into the space, into the industry, and it gets, distributed, it feels like I'm talking about tax dollars, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, if the money gets spent in a way where it gets back into agents' hands, they're getting better tools, they're getting better technology, they're getting better marketing. That's a great thing, I think, for everybody, right? If that's what actually happens. But I don't believe that always does happen. I think there's a lot that's just consolidation, a lot of, hey, we're coming in, we're going to take over XYZ agency, XYZ FMO. We're going to kind of streamline this for our own private shareholders, right? If it's not a publicly owned company, still they could easily have still several private shareholders. And I think we've seen maybe a little bit of both of this in the space without saying names. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a black and white thing. I wouldn't say it's, private equity is a horrible thing for all of us. But I also wouldn't say it's necessarily good either. So that's kind of my gut reaction to the question. What would you say?
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate, nuanced kind of perspective on it. I think there definitely is some good things, I feel like, and some bad things. I think, if we talk about some of the bad things, I think if anything, what it's caused is much less competition, right? Like, if you really look at it, there is probably 2 to 3 real organizations that play at the highest level right now in our space. And, when I first came into the space, I mean, there was a slew of FMOs and organizations that really had no affiliations with each other. Like there might have been 20 to 30 organizations at similar sizes that were competing against each other. And then I wonder, so from that perspective, I feel like it could potentially be a harmful thing because it kind of creates an environment where there doesn't need to be as much competition from those at the top, which I feel like the more that those at the top have to compete for the services of agents and those on the ground, on the front lines, I think the more it trickles down to the benefit of the agent. Right.
Yeah.
But if they're like anything, like any business, right? If there's no competition, they don't need to try as hard.
Yeah.
Right. To get, because it's like where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? There is no one. Or, the other person in town is doing about what we're doing, and so
it's a monopoly, right? I mean, the government tries to protect consumers from monopolies forming because it can be so damaging to, that industry if a monopoly does get formed, right?
And to be fair, right, there are several players, right? It's not like it's one player that's dominating everyone. But it's just, there's less competition than there might have been when we started.
Oh, for sure. There's no doubt in my mind.
And it has created a bit of an environment where it's like, I mean, not to say that this is a new thing necessarily, but like for a little while there, this wasn't felt as strongly. It's like, you're on this team, I'm on that team. I'm a blood, you're a crip. If I see you, it's on site. And maybe not literally, but you know what I mean. But it's a lot of tribalism, has kind of returned.
Oh, 100%. I feel like Josh,
tribalism.
When we talked to Josh Youngs on the pod the other day, I feel like he kind of touched on that,
Yeah. I think everybody sees it.
Yeah.
The good about it though, is I think the additional funds and revenue and money that flowed into our space as a result is kind of probably propelled the industry forward technology wise.
For sure.
So created maybe a better environment for agents, right? Like, I mean, truthfully, without some of these large PE groups, would we have stood as much of a chance against on like situations like Final Rule 2024? Probably not. And so I think there's pros and cons too. In a nutshell, I think there's good and some bad. Everybody seems to have a very strong perspective on it though, to where it's like, this is good, this is bad. I mean, there's been people we've seen that will publicly say that the PE groups are bad for the industry and they're harming people. Like they'll publicly say this, and then 6 months later they sell.
Yes.
Everybody probably knows who I'm talking about.
I know exactly who you're talking about. But I also believe multiple people have done that as well.
Right. And it's almost like, that kind of screams to me like you'll say whatever suits your agenda based on how the wind blows that particular day, right? Yep. And so I think that's kind of a I don't know, interesting thing about it, to where like probably a lot of the loudest proponents against it probably don't even believe what they're saying. It's more like, let's demonize the PE groups so that I can stand out and look, I didn't sell, I'm a champion of the people. And you can draw business to you from that narrative. But if the check is right, you don't it's like, well, I didn't really believe that. I didn't really believe that. And so I don't know. I think a lot of it is on the loudest critics of it. A lot of it is probably showmanship.
It's showmanship, salesmanship, right? I mean, part of it is like playing the best hand with the cards you have, right? So if you're not backed by private equity, right? If you're truly still independent, that can be your tagline. That can be on, the top of your building. It can be on your business card, right? Like it can be your pitch is, hey, there's a lot of giant equity firms that have come into the market. I'm still independent. I still own 100% of my business, just like Christian and I still do. 100% ownership.
Didn't sell.
Not
Haven't
sold. I'm not leaving. But then, you get the money and then all of a sudden the pitch changes, right? It's a 180-degree turn. It's, oh, I actually can get you better access to XYZ because I am backed by private equity.
Right.
And so it's kind of, it's two-handed, two-faced. I don't appreciate the narrative. I think being transparent with everybody, would Christian and I sell if the price was right? Of course we would.
Yes.
It's $2 billion. And that check can be written in my name. Glenn Shelton name is on the screen.
I promise Christian will get his part. I guarantee.
Christian, I will give him his half, of course. And I will pay taxes on it too, of course.
Whatever you want. Just give it.
$2 billion. 9 zeros. 9 zeros. Okay.
Yeah.
2.
It's an interesting kind of paradigm, but I think that is the real reality of it. That there's some good, there's some bad. Let's shift gears into sponsors of this episode because I do want to have as much time as possible to talk about the main topic.
Absolutely.
It's a big one. Glenn, who's this episode sponsored by? Episode 82.
82, the Jason Witten episode, which you missed it, but before we went live, I wasn't sure, but I guess Jason Witten was number 82. Shout out to all those Cowboys fans out there, even though I'm not one. Today's episode is sponsored by Lead Heroes, your favorite senior insurance lead provider. Right now at Lead Heroes, you can get fixed cost turning 65 leads, final expense life insurance leads, also Medicare supplement leads, and recently we just added fixed cost dental vision hearing leads. The dental vision hearing leads cost only $10 per lead. This is one of the most affordable fixed cost leads you will be able to get your hands on. It's exclusive, compliant, and it comes with the original recording of the phone call. So this is a real person. It's a real lead. This isn't just some random name off a list that you were given and called a lead. If you would like more information about any of those fixed cost leads, including our dental vision hearing leads, head over to leadheroes.com, leadheroes.com. And as always, the link will also be in the comments or description below this video.
Yes. All right. Let's shift gears into the main topic at hand. What does it take for an agent to write 500 apps a year? You mentioned it earlier. We closed on a transaction where we acquired just under that. 480, 485, something like that. New clients in one swoop from an acquisition.
Yep.
If we ever do bring back that acquisitions course, I genuinely hope you guys take advantage of it because, I posted it in the Facebook group, but in the last 6 months, we've acquired over 1,200 new clients through acquisition, not factoring any numbers in of new clients we've written internally, just buying books of businesses. So,
which is crazy.
How long will it take the average agent to write 1,200 new clients? For some of them, it will never.
6 months.
6 months.
Clearly. 6 months. You could just write that on your own pen. That's only 200 clients a month. Come on. You can't write 50 apps a week. Come on, you guys.
But writing 500 apps a year, I feel like for a lot of agents, when they hear that, they're like, that is so far out of reach for me. It's not realistic for me. It's not possible for me. There's a lot of things to kind of dissect here, but let's jump into the first reactions to it. So when you hear it, if you were talking to an agent and they were like, Glenn, I want to write 500 apps a year. I've paid you for an hour of your time. Where do we start? What do I do?
The first thing I'm doing is breaking this down into a more granular number, right? Obviously, I think 500 is I don't think just thinking about it if you just focus on the 500 number, I don't know how beneficial it is. If you're just like 500, 500, I'm going to write 500. For me, my immediate thought is always the run rate. What is the average production daily or weekly if you're writing 500 apps per year? So simple math here, right? 500 divided by 12.
This episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by the Seven Figure Medicare Agent Summit. Guys, it is a fact that getting around other people that are chasing the same ambitions and destinations in their business as you is a great thing, and it can propel your business years ahead than not getting around people and networking and going to live events. The Seven Figure Medicare Agent Summit is the premier event. Every year we hear year after year after year that it is the event that has the best content. So many events nowadays, they do a lot of pitching from the stage. They're really just there to sell you things. And if nothing more than that, they're just a bunch of vendors put together and they're just nothing but networking. There's no content. The summit is the best of both worlds, you guys. The summit puts together great, fantastic speakers from all ends of the industry, and also get you in a room with like-minded individuals from all over the country that are trying to build their business just like you. The summit this year is taking place in Salt Lake City from June 22nd to 24th at the Hilton Hotel. We still have tickets available. We'd love to have you come out for the event. We are over 50% sold out at the time of recording this, but get your ticket now while you can. This event will sell out, and we'd love to see you there in Salt Lake City.
I'm using calculators so I don't
divided by 4.
Give you guys the right number. So 40. It's about 42 apps a month, right? If you're writing year round, you're writing all 12 months, and then divided by 4, it's about 11 apps per week. So let's say
5 days a week.
5 days a week. I mean,
6
or maybe
days,
you're working 6. Yeah. So, but essentially it's 2 apps per day is what that number breaks down to be, which is super reasonable. Like if you really think about your ability to produce 2 apps a day, you could write 2 apps on a single lead on a single appointment. You could write a husband and wife, so essentially one lead, one appointment could yield you those 2 apps, and you just have to do that. I'm not saying that'll happen every time. I'm trying to remember the stat. I used to try to, when I was writing Final Expense, I used to try to keep stats on how often I was getting a husband, wife. It wasn't as often as I wanted it to be, but it was a good chunk of the time. I'd probably guess like 30-40% I was getting couples.
Pretty strong.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I would love for that number to be 70, 80, 90%, but there's a lot of singles out there, a lot of people who already had coverage, but so then the question becomes, how do you consistently and habitually, word of the week, word of last week, habitually create that routine where you're cranking out 11 apps every week, 42 apps every month?
Can I tackle this from a little bit of a different perspective? So I love breaking down the numbers, and I've that's always the way I went about it as well. I would look at it a little differently though, because if I'm trying to do that, I'm trying to write 100 apps a month during AEP, which throws my numbers off a little bit. So
that's true.
Let's say you take October and November and you pencil in 200 during those 2 months. We'll circle back on how you're going to do that. But off season and AEP are just different. I feel like for the majority of agents, they're just going to be different. There's more people that you can write, more people are eligible to change. It's like the Christmas season. You hear Christmas music, you see Christmas decorations, you see jingle Christmas lights. Bells, jingle bells, even if you hate Christmas, even if you hate the holiday season, you're kind of in the mood a little bit, even if you don't want to admit it. That's how seniors are with Medicare and their plans during AEP. It's everywhere. They're inundated. So you have 500, and let's say
so 300
you're
for
looking
the other
at
10 months.
for the other 10 months. So when you look at it from that perspective, then you're looking at 30 a month. And that might be a bit more digestible in the off season, right?
Closer to one per day.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of because like I would look at it from that perspective. I would also probably look at it based on, okay, is it possible for me to do a little bit more than normal during OEP? Maybe so, depending on kind of what your marketing attack is. So maybe there's a slight bit more that you can do during OEP than there, you know what I mean? So like, I feel like you should segment it based off of the times of the year. That's how I always would do it, based on my opportunity. And so I think once you've got those numbers figured out, then really putting together a marketing strategy that tailors to who you're targeting that time of the year. So during OEP, right? We analyze who can we write. We can write people. We can write, of course, the people you can write all year round. People you can write all year round is MedSup rewrites T65 people that qualify for various special enrollment periods. They're moving to the state, whatever the case might be. Those are all year round. But then during OEP, you also have people that are already on Medicare Advantage plans that want to change to another Medicare Advantage plan or change to original Medicare with a PDP and get a MedSup, right? So basically, anybody that has a Medicare Advantage plan is eligible to make one change. So you create a marketing attack based on those people. Then when you get to April, which we're in today, today's the 1st. This is not April Fool's. This is real, genuine information. Then you dial into, of course, that time of the year, you most likely will write the smallest amount a month for the most part, unless you just have a really strong system for T65 business, which you can create, but it's a little tricky for the average person. So from April to the end of September, you have a system where you're targeting T65 business, Medicare supplement rewrites, things like that. Then during AEP, you have an AEP marketing tax. So like, I think it changes a little bit based on kind of what time of the year you're going into. But like, let's say you can write 50 apps a month during the 3 months of OEP. Well, then you're only at 150 left for the remaining 70 months of the year. 70 months. You have 70 months left, which brings you down to like 21 a month. Right. So I think those numbers are super important to start off with.
Totally. I know there's some agents out there who they like ignore AEP. It's just another, I always see them brag about it during AEP too. They like come out of the woodworks. They're like, oh yeah, just another day of the month for me. I do T65 all year only,
And I think there are some exceptions to what I'm about to say. There are, for sure. I know of some that are exceptions, but for the most part, the agents that are doing that aren't focusing at all on AEP are not writing 500 apps a year.
For sure. I mean, I'm thinking about the numbers to consistently write 40 to 50 T65 apps every single month on your own pen. You would have to have a pipeline that is just insane. You lose so many of these folks, from a lead and marketing perspective. Turning 65 intimately well. Been marketing it for years. It's very competitive, and you have to have a really strong pipeline follow-up system to convert these folks, even though they all have to sign up typically, right? Unless there's certain exceptions. But you'd have to have an incredible pipeline. It would also take a lot of money. You'd have to be reinvesting a lot back into the business, and a lot of agents just aren't willing to do that, or can't. They can't, or they won't do that. So, another thing from what you were saying too that I was going to mention is I just saw someone post in the group within the last day or two about their OEP numbers, and I thought they did great. Shout out to whoever this is. I don't remember what your name is, but they said they wrote like 115 apps during OEP.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
And they lost. I think they said they only lost like 12 of them, maybe less. Maybe I'm trying to remember the numbers, but they netted, well, it was well over 100 total apps that, went through new clients. And I thought that was fantastic. So yeah, I mean, great point that, depending on the time of year, you're going to write different volumes of business, unless of course your business is specifically structured in a way where you're not doing that.
Which I don't feel like that's impossible. I do feel like it is more difficult for the average person. Like if your goal is 500 apps a year, I think that is probably one of the hardest ways to do it. Because like Glenn said, I think you need a very specific lead source and a marketing attack that is almost perfect. There's people that have put together webinar systems that have made claims that they can do stuff like that. I think it has to be a really damn good webinar. You know what I mean? Like not all webinars are created equal. A lot of you guys are running your webinar ads to me. I'm seeing them right now. Like you're in Wichita or something. It's like, I'm your local Wichita Medicare agent. Watch my webinar, and you're showing it to me. Probably because of this new Facebook ads categories thing. I get it, but like you can exclude me from, even if I'm not in your state. I know you can't exclude the age because of that, but like you can at least focus on your state. I'm your local Wichita agent. Here you go, Christian Brindle. Take a look at this. 32-year-old man in Utah.
Maybe you're disabled and you're going to go on Medicare soon. Okay.
But I see them every day, right? Like,
yeah,
so like,
I do too.
So like, that's probably not a webinar system that's punching out. Just, it's probably not printing money, I guess, is what I'd say. And I feel like for most people, what you need is a little bit of a diversity of leads. I don't think you need a ton of sources, but like you probably need like 3 or 4. And you're going to have maybe one that's your favorite or one that is like your cream of the crop. And then like you have another one that's more of a filler, but like you need enough leads. In addition to that, I think we should get this out of the way. I don't believe you can do this if you're not willing to spend big money.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, this is where I think a lot of agents get lost in the sauce. Is every agent wants to write 500 apps, right? But are you willing to put in the time and spend that level of money? I mean, 500 apps is an incredible amount of revenue you're generating. I mean, what is that? $250,000?
Yeah,
roughly. Just ballparking, could be a little more or less, but so if you're going to generate $250,000 in commissions, you're obviously going to have to spend a lot of money, you guys, to do that. It's not, if it was cheap and easy, everybody would be doing it, right? That's just not the case. So there's some like smaller parts of this too. I wanted to mention is like, you need to budget in. I mentioned the agent that just wrote all those apps during AP, and he talked about his fall off, and it wasn't bad fall off. It was somewhere between 5 to 10 apps. So, I mean, you're talking about maybe 5% of what he wrote fell off, but that's a number that is important. If you actually want to have 500 apps issued and they are your clients, you should be budgeting in retention. I might lose a few percentage points of these apps that I'm writing. And then, I would even try to overshoot your monthly quota that you're kind of setting for yourself, your monthly goal, so you're trying, maybe next month you won't hit your goal. So you need to maybe build in like all of these, you need to front load all of these things. The marketing, you need to front load the marketing and spend a little bit more than the exact number, because you really want to make sure you have enough leads, because you might have a bad month. You drop direct mail, you don't get as many lead pieces back, or you get your lead set, you don't close quite as many as you normally do. So you spend a little bit more, like all of these little nuances with every angle, because if you just did the math straight across, you probably won't hit that 500 number. You'd probably fall short. You'd probably be like 350, 400. So you have to, it's almost like you're shooting for 600 to hit 500 in a sense.
Shoot for the stars, land on the moon.
Yeah.
Kind of mentality. I think there's going to be people that watch this that they're going to think in their mind, I can do this with grassroots marketing. 99% chance you cannot.
the disdain in your voice.
No, I'm not. I love
true.
grassroots marketing. I love grassroots marketing.
Well, dude,
we've done it in our agency.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But we're talking like major production here. One thing I've been saying a lot recently that I think is very important for people to hear, to hit numbers like this, you need predictable lead flow. So like if you look at grassroots marketing, referral-based marketing, that kind of thing, it's not predictable. It ebbs and flows, right? It goes up and down. You don't have control. Whereas if you're buying leads or you're running ads, or you're generating your own leads, or maybe you're doing seminars, like these are the type of things that you need to do to hit this number. Now, does it mean you're not getting referrals? Does it mean you're not, benefiting off of some grassroots marketing, that kind of thing? No, not necessarily, but like that's more of like supplementary to me,
right?
Than it would be with anything else. I saw someone in the comments, we haven't had much success with mailers. I don't think you can do this with direct mail. And
not exclusively, that's for sure.
If
good luck.
If you are, if there's very few situations, like I think if you live in a very specific area, like a very rural area, there's not a lot of agents there, like maybe, and you put together a very specific type of marketing piece, but like your traditional, like send out generic direct mail piece and they either call you or they send back a reply card and you call them. Usually in a lot of places, I mean, that's pretty dead. You're talking 0.5% to 1% response rates, right? Like, and when you really look at that, you're probably spending $70 a lead, $100 a lead.
Yes. Very real numbers.
So like you need a viable lead source. Let's talk about that. You need a real viable lead source. And I believe the easiest three for agents to replicate is buying leads, probably not direct mail.
Probably Lead Hero leads.
No, but not even saying Lead Heroes necessarily. Lead Heroes is a great option for sure.
It's a great option. Yeah.
Preset appointments would be a good one because then you have appointments set, right? You don't have to waste, because the other thing you need to really concentrate on is using your time wisely and efficiently.
Yeah.
You can spend a lot of time prospecting or setting your own appointments that don't go anywhere. So like preset appointments, you need something that's going to be very efficient. I think preset appointments are good. Marketing that's very high intent to generate your own business is good.
Yep.
Seminars is good. Because you do seminars where you're presenting to 20, 30, 40 people all at one time. It's very efficient, right? But none of these things are necessarily cheap.
No, they are not.
None of these things are necessarily cheap. But like when I've had my best years production-wise, I was spending a lot of money on leads and marketing.
Yeah.
And I was working my tail off trying to sell these leads. I was running a lot of appointments. I was doing a lot of sales calls. I was just busting my hump. And so I think, realistically, I mean, you need a combination of the right lead vehicle and the willingness to bust your ass. I don't think this comes without busting your ass. I don't care how good your lead source is.
I totally agree. Another part of this too, that we've talked a little bit about on the show before is, and this is kind of an underrated, I think, part of this conversation, is you need the carriers too. Like you're not gonna write 500 apps with one carrier. I mean, you could in theory, but you're probably similar to what Christian said about having a portfolio of different marketing. You have all these kind of different avenues you can go with carriers. You should also have your own little portfolio put together where certain people can go with certain carriers and have some diversity there, especially if you get into like a med sup underwriting situation. You're trying to place this client. Well, this carrier might not take them, but this carrier will. Not to mention if a carrier makes a major change and you're putting all your business with one carrier, and now you're really stuck because you don't have really relationships, or you're not familiar with any other carriers. So I think that's another part of this conversation that probably gets overlooked a lot by a lot of agents.
We've talked a lot on the show recently about the importance of offering Medicare Advantage and MedSup as a Medicare agent.
Yeah.
I don't think, with very few exceptions, again, there's exceptions to every rule. It doesn't mean it's the rule. It's the exception, not the rule. But like, I don't think for the majority of people that they're going to be able to write this type of production only doing one or the other.
For sure.
I think you have to be able to fit people in the box that they fit in, that they belong in.
Yes.
And if you're trying to force everybody into one box, that really gives you an uphill battle if you're only selling Medicare Advantage or you're only selling Medicare Supplement.
It's just a liability, you know?
Agree.
Why do it? You know, it's like, I'm a broker, but I really only sell Mutual of Omaha.
Like, so I'm not. So I'm biased. I'm as biased as biased can be.
Right. It's like, I can't. It drives me insane. Dude, I can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation with agents. Well, okay. Well, what carriers are you representing? What carriers are you selling mostly? I really just sell this one carrier. Wait, are you captive? No, I'm not captive. I'm independent. I'm a broker. It's like, what? What is going on here? Like, do you know what the word broker means? Let's start here. Like, you work for the client. You can offer multiple insurance companies. Like, why would you not do it? It's such an advantage. I had a quick story here. I had a big client last AEP on the Lead Hero side, captive organization. They did great with Lead Heroes during AEP. They really struggled during OEP. Really struggled. And I attribute a lot of that to the fact that it's a captive organization. Mm-hmm. They don't have the ability, like most of us do, to go out and rep essentially any carrier, any plan we want, right? Utilize that, leverage it. That'll get you to 500 faster. I guarantee it, than if you're just trying to pump one company. I think it's just laziness, honestly. I think a lot of you are being lazy if you're just like, I'm just going to work with this one company, you know?
In addition to that, too, I think you need systems in place that help you with lead follow-up. Like, so you need automations in place. You need appointment setters are great.
Yes.
You know, like things
Hire
that
heroes.
Hire heroes, automations, like different things that kind of help you with outreach without you personally having to do it. Because I can't stress this enough. The time it takes to write 500 apps is extensive.
Yes.
Right? Because you have to be in the field every day or on sales calls every day.
Full-time job.
Like,
for sure.
You can't waste the time that you have doing frivolous things. I think you absolutely have to maximize your ability to sell, and your ability to be efficient. And so I think a lot of that comes down to finding ways to delegate or automate things, even if you don't have a massive staff. I think, having a CRM that can kind of help you with automations and workflows and things like that, helping you with client outreach. I mean, the stats are there about how much higher your contact rate is with a lead if you have automations and touch points built in, opposed to just trying to call them. And that's all you're trying to do. Doesn't mean you don't call them. Some people take what I just said there to the opposite extreme. Like, they won't do any calls. They'll only do automations. And they're like, I can't reach anybody. No, it doesn't replace your calls. It supplements your calls.
100%. I think that's a really great point to make. Is like, you could do everything right. You could have the portfolio of carriers. You could have the portfolio of marketing. You'd have more than enough leads. You can have great retention. But if you mismanage your time at the end of this, you still won't get to 500. That is a huge factor as well. That gets you there for sure. Especially your time management during AEP, right? If you're structuring it like Christian talked about, where you kind of have these cycles where you're producing more, producing less, producing your most, which is totally normal, right? Off season, like we're entering in officially today. Welcome to the off season, everybody. Don't you dare go on vacation right now. Keep writing. You can keep writing all year. I think that time management during AEP is even more critical, because if you're going to be producing more apps per hour worked than any other time of year, how you manage those hours is super important. So having staff, having technology, whatever you need to do. I guess in this scenario, an LOA agent would be cheating because we're talking about 500 apps on your own pen, right? Yeah.
Different topic.
Different topic
for another day.
Yeah.
Good topic, buddy. Good show.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to move into final thoughts. I know we both have kind of a hard out at top of the hour.
Yeah.
What final thoughts would you have on this?
It seems daunting for some of you. You might hear 500 apps and even think it's impossible. The average Medicare agent only writes 4 or 5 apps per year. That's a real stat. That's a real number. So when you're talking about doing essentially 100 times what the average agent does, it's a big number. And it probably puts you, and I know many agents who've done it before, but it probably puts you in the 1%, I'd imagine, maybe the 0.5%. I mean, you are in the top echelon. I mean, you're in the very top of Medicare producers if you're writing 500 apps or more per year on your own pen. So don't get overwhelmed. I think focusing on kind of bite-sized pieces, map out your month, map out your week, map out your day, have accountability, have as much help as you can. Hire admin, hire an appointment setter, hire customer service. All of those things can make a huge difference. And and most important, and finally, don't be afraid to spend the money. Because again, the pot of gold at the end of this rainbow is plus or minus roughly $250,000 in commissions, which again, renewals, right? Most of that should carry on and be renewable going forward. So this should be a significant investment that you are planning to make in yourself and in your business to achieve this type of goal. But it's doable. It's more than doable. You can do it. You absolutely can do it.
Yeah. Well said. My final thoughts are, I think you need to have a lot of things right in your business. It's not as simple as just being a good salesperson or having good working knowledge of your products. You have to have a lot of things right. You can't have distractions. You need efficiency in your business, but I think we've laid out a pretty good template for, what you guys need to do if this is something you want to do. It's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, but I think, if you have a commitment to it and you're willing to put that work in on the structure of your business and also working to make sure that you're out there consistently writing business, I think it can be a good thing. And I think it's doable. I know it's doable. That's my final thoughts, guys. Appreciate you guys watching all the way to the end. We certainly appreciate you. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on whatever platform you're watching this episode that allows you to do so. Make sure to comment on the stream to be entered into Freebie Friday.
Yeah, baby.
And make sure to give us a 5-star review and subscribe on podcast-only platforms for those of you that listen to the audio, such as Apple Podcast. Thanks, guys, for watching. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one. Here's to your massive success.
See you next time, Millie and Billies. Little Millie.